Hello guys, so my name is Yogesh and in this video we will be going. Hello guys, so my name is Yogesh. In this video we will be going to basically understand about the database management system and the SQL nodes, right? Right. So these are basically notes. The PDF that you are basically seeing, the credit goes for this PDF to apna college. Means in this PDF basically that you are seeing behind is basically from that channel, right? So I have taken this PDF for just revision purpose, right? So let me get started. We will in this video we will basically learn about the DBMS, right? DBMS basically stands for data management systems, right? What is database? Database is basically a collection of related data. Database, what is database? Is basically a collection of related data which represents some aspect of real world, which represents some aspect of real. A database system is designed to be built and populated with the data at certain tasks, right? So what is database? In simple terms we can say that database is basically a collection of related data. Collection of related data means the data that is related to each another, right? So that is what we call as the collection. Now what is related data, right? Suppose we are having one table, and in that table suppose we are having one id 1 2 3, right? And we are having some students with some student data, right? So we are having a student enrollment number, we are having a student school number, or student enrollment number, student mobile number, right? So you can see that the enrollment number and the student name and the student phone number are basically related to each other. That is what we call as the related database. So this is what basically is related data, right? Now we come to the database management system. So what is database management system? Database management system is basically a software for storing and retrieving user data while considering appropriate security measures, right? It consists of a group of programs which manipulate the database, right? The database management system accepts the request from the data from an application and instruct the operating system to provide the specific data, right? In large systems, our DBMS help user and other third-party software to store and retrieve data, right? So, in the simple words, I want to say that what is DBMS? DBMS basically stands for the database management system. What is database management system? A database management system is basically a software. It is basically what? It is basically a software that basically store the related data, or that basically store the database. So what is DBMS? I want to tell you in simple words. DBMS is basically a database management system. It is a software that can store the related data of user, or we can say that it can store database and provide functionality, and it contains certain group of programs with the help of which we can modify the database, right? We can modify and manipulate the database, right? The database management system accept the request for data from an application and instruct the operating system to provide the specific data, right? Right. Now database management system were developed to handle the following difficulties. Typically file processing system supported by conventional operating system. So what happened when there was not when the database management system was not developed, the programmers or the software engineers were using the file processing system, right? File processing system, right? So to overcome from that file processing system, we are basically using this we are basically using the database management system, right? So so what it is saying, so what it is saying, database management system were developed, it was developed to handle the following difficulties of typical file processing system, right? File processing system, right? File processing system supported by conventional operating system. Number one is redundancy, and its inconsistency. difficulty in accessing data, right? It is very difficult in accessing data in file processing system. Data isolation or multiple files and formats. Integrity problem is also there, atomicity update, concurrence, security problems and all, right? We will discuss it later, right? Now we come to the ER diagram. ER diagram basically represent the entity relationship diagram, right? So ER diagram or entity relationship diagram is a conceptual model. It is basically a conceptual model that gives the graphical representation of logic structure of database, right? It shows all the constraints. Constraints means all the rules and relationship that exist among the different components. An ER diagram is mainly composed of the following three components: entity sets, attributes, and relationship. Right. So entity set, attributes, and relationship set. Right. Right. So this is basically an entity sets. Right. So roll number is a primary key, and that can be identified uniquely. So it can contain three components: entity set, attribute, and relations. Right. Thus, by using student roll number, student can be. Now, what is entity set? Entity set is a set of same type of entity. It's a set of same type of entities. And entity set is basically what? It is a set of same kind of entities. Right. So same kind of entities को हम क्या कहते हैं? Entity. Same kind of entities. An entity set is basically a set of same kind of entities. Right. Right. And number one is there are a strong entity set and weak entity set, right? There is one thing that is strong entity set and weak entity set. Strong entity set. A strong entity set is means what is entity? Entity set. Entity set is basically it is basically a set of entities. What is entities? Entities is basically real world object, right? Suppose student. Student is an entity. Suppose university is also an entity. So entity is basically real world objects. That is what we call as the entity, right? So that is entity, right? Entity are also of two types. One is the strong entity set and another the weak entity set. So strong entity set is what? A strong entity set is an entity set contains sufficient attributes to uniquely identify its entities. In other words, a primary key exists for a strong entity set, right? And primary key of a strong entity set is represented by underlining it. Weak entity set is what? A weak entity set is an entity that does not contain sufficient attributes to uniquely identify, right? So a strong entity, so you can uniquely identify a strong entity, whereas you cannot uniquely identify the weak entity set, right? Right. In other words, a primary key exists for entity sets. Right. So a strong entity set can exist the primary key, while in weak entity set, in other words, a primary key does not exist for weak entities. Right. 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 So this is all right. Now discriminator can identify a group of identities. Discriminator. Now we come to the relationship. What is relationship? Relationship is a very important topic, right? So relationship is defined as an association among several entities. It is basically what? It is basically association between the several entities, right? So we are having different entities, and the association between those entities is what we call as the relationship, right? Relationship is defined as the association among different entities. There are various type of relation, right? Unary relationship set, binary relationship set, ternary relationship set, and n-ary relationship set, right? So unary relationship set is a relationship set where only one entity set participate and in a relationship set. So where only one entity is participating is what we call as the unary relationship. Binary relationship set. Binary relationship set is a relationship set where two entities set participate. Where two entity set can participate is basically what we call as the binary relationship set, right? and ternary is more than three entity participate, right? N means entity participate, right? So basically this is this relationship. A relationship is defined as the association among several entities, means connection between the connection among the several entities is what we call as. So it is basically the connection among the various entities is what we call as a relationship, right? So relationship are of four types basically. Number one is unary relationship. Unary, number one is unary relationship set. Unary relationship set is a type of relation in which only one entity can participate. One entity set participate, right, in a relationship set. Binary relationship set is that set in which two entities set participate in relationship set, right? Ternary means three entity will participate, right? Entity means n type of entities will participate, right? It is so easy. Next we will going to see about the cardinality. It is basically very important thing, that is cardinality. Please keep in mind cardinality is very important topic. I'm definitely saying it is really very important topic. That is cardinality. Cardinality, right? So cardinality constraints defined as the maximum number of relationship instances in which entity can participate. So cardinality basically defines the maximum number of relationship instances, right? So there are variously two to three types of cardinality. Number one is one-to-one cardinality, right? Right. So one-to-one cardinality. One-to-one cardinality. An entity in set A can be associated with most one entity in set B. Right. So what is one-to-one cardinality? A entity in set A, अगर कोई entity है एक set A में, can be associated with most one entity in set B. Right. Most entity in set B, right? One to many cardinality, one to one, maybe it is that likely. Suppose we are having one entity like this, and we are having another entity like this, and suppose these are associated with each other. So what we consider one. This is one to one. This is one to one cardinality, right? And for one to many, so this is how we can represent the, I think, one to many. This is one, and here the streak that we are using, it represented is one to many cardinality, right? Many to one. Many to one will be represented like this. Many to one, right? Many to many cardinality will be represented in this way, according to me, right? So basically like this and like this. This is basically the many to many cardinality. Cardinality क्या होती है? Cardinality constraint defined as the maximum number of relationship states. Maximum number of how many maximum number of relationship instances exist between the two entity set, right? So normal forms. Right. सो आई होप दैट वी हैव डिस्कस, हमने क्या क्या डिस्कस किया, स्टार्टिंग से करते हमने डेटाबेस डिस्कस किया, डेटाबेस क्या होता है, डेटाबेस मैनेजमेंट सिस्टम क्या होता है, डेटाबेस मैनेजमेंट की सिस्टम क्यों पड़ी, जरूरत क्यों पड़ी डेटाबेस मैनेजमेंट की, अपन को जरूरत इसलिए पड़ी क्योंकि पहले के जो इन द रिसेंट ईयर्स सॉफ्टवेयर इंजीनियर्स वर यूजिंग व्हाट were using the file processing system, which were having some drawbacks. The drawbacks are as follows. Number one is data redundancy, redundancy and inconsistency, right? Number second is difficulty in accessing data. There are some of the drawbacks, right? After that, we are going to study about EI diagram. EI diagram is basically stands for the entity relationship diagram, right? Let me tell you what is entity. Entity is basically a real world and object is what. Suppose student is an entity, student is an entity, college student is an entity, right? That entity having some attributes, right? So this is entity, and this entity having some attributes. There is roll number. This is attribute. This is attribute. This is attribute. So these are basically known as what we call as attributes, right? So this is what we call as the attributes. This is attribute, right? Entity set we have discussed. What is entity set? Entity set is a collection of entity set are also of two types. One is the strong entity, weak entity set. Strong entity set is a strong entity set is an entity. Strong entity strong entity set is a set that contain, मतलब जिसमें प्राइमरी की एग्जिस्ट करती है, दैट इज व्हाट वी कॉल एज द स्ट्रॉन्ग एंटिटी सेट. जिसमें प्राइमरी एग्जिस्ट नहीं करती है, दैट इज व्हाट वी कॉल एज द वीक एंटिटी सेट. सिंपल. फिर हम रिलेशन पे आए. रिलेशन क्या होता है? रिलेशनशिप इज डिफाइंड एज द एसोसिएशन अमंग सेवरल एंटिटीज. So it basically describe about the association among the several entities, right? So several entities का जो association है वो basically describe होता है किसके द्वारा? सेवरल एंटिटीज का एसोसिएशन वो होगा इसके द्वारा, राइट. राइट, ठीक है. अब इसके अंदर भी एसोसिएशन भी रिलेशन भी चार टाइप के होते हैं. यूनरी होता है, बाइनरी होता है, टर्नरी होता है, एनरी होता है. यूनरी में यूनरी ऑपरेशन क्या होता है? इट इज अ रिलेशनशिप इन विच बेसिकली वन एंटिटी कैन पार्टिसिपेट इन द रिलेशनशिप सेट. बाइनरी रिलेशनशिप बेसिकली टू एंटिटी, ट्राई में थ्री, राइट. Now the next what we are going to discuss of cardinality. Cardinality constraint upon maximum number of relationship instances, right? So cardinality constraints basically describe about the maximum number of relationship instances among the entity can participate. Cardinality में बहुत टाइप की होती है. one to one, one to many, many to one, and many to many, right? So these are basically the cardinality. That is what we are saying, cardinality. Now attributes are basically descriptive properties owned by the entity, right? So attributes are basically nothing. They are basically the description or the descriptive property of an entity की जो entity है ना उसको आप और describe करेंगे ना तो उसको हम descriptive property के terms में ले सकते हैं. That is what we call as, right. Type of attributes, there are various types of simple attributes, composite attributes, multi-valued attributes, derived attributes, and key attributes. Simple attributes are those attributes which cannot be divided further. ऐसे attributes जिनको आप बाद में divide नहीं कर सकते हो, that type of attributes is basically known as simple attributes, right? Simple attributes are basically those attributes which cannot be divided further. For an example, your enrollment number that can be not divided further. Your age that cannot be divided is a further, right? Your mobile number. These are basically simple attributes. That is what I am saying. Now the next thing is basically the composite attributes. So, right. Composite attributes are those which can be composed of many or other simple attributes like name and address, right? So ऐसे attributes that right, wait, so what are attributes? Basically attributes that can be divided among themselves, right? For an example, suppose your name consists of first name, first and last. That is what we call as the composite attributes. That can be, your address may be divided, or your university name may be divided, right? Your place of birth maybe, yes, the place of birth may be, that is what we call as a simple attribute, right? Now come to the derived attributes. Simple valued attribute you have seen. Now come to the derived attributes. What are derived attributes? So derived attributes are those which can be derived from other attributes. Example, age can be derived from DOB, right? So means there is quite confusion between the multi-valued attributes and derived attributes, right? Composite attributes तो पता है क्या, जिनको आप divide नहीं कर सकते. Multi-valued attributes which can take more than one value. अच्छा, sorry. Means derived attributes that can be derived, right? Like date of birth से आप age, डेट ऑफ बर्थ से आप एज को ड्राइव कर सकते हो, जिसको ड्राइव कर सकते हो उसको अपन क्या कहते हैं, उसको क्या कहते हैं, derived attributes, right? Right, right, right. सो जिसको आप ड्राइव बेसिकली कर सकते हो, उनको हम क्या कहते हैं, राइट, राइट। सो वी आर बेसिकली डिस्कवर कंपोजिट एट्रीब्यूट्स ऐसे होते हैं which can be composed of many other simple attributes like name, address, जो सिंपल एट्रीब्यूट्स के कॉम्बिनेशन के उनको हम ये कहते हैं मल्टी वैल्यूड एट्रीब्यूट्स दैट कैन बी derived from, that can contains multi value attributes are those which can take more than one value. The attributes that can take more than one value, that is what we call as multi value attributes like DOB होगा, it can take your date, your date of birth, right? It can take your month also, you can date also, and which year will point. So it is basically multi valued. Simple attribute, composite attributes are basically those attributes which are composed of many simple attributes. Number one, and the last one is key attributes, are those which can be identified uniquely. These key attributes basically identify as uniquely. That is what we call as the key attributes, right? Now we come to the constraints, right? Uh, so, what are constraints? Relation constraints are the restriction imposed on the database contents and operations. They ensure the correctness of data and the database, right? So, uh, constraints are of two types: domain constraints and tuple unique constraints, key constraint, entity constraints, and reference constraint. So domain constraints are identified as a domain or set of values of an attribute. It is specified that a value taken by an attribute must be atomic value. Right. A tuple constraint is specify that all the tuples must be necessary uniquely in any relation. Key constraints, all the values of the primary key must be unique and the value of the primary key must not be null. Key constraint. Key constraint is basically imposed on the primary key or all the key. But all the values of primary key must be unique and the value primary key must not be null. Right. Next one is the entity integrity constraint. Right. So entity integrity constraints are specified that has no attribute. Now the next thing that is come to our mind, that is closure. So closure is very important concept. The set of all those attributes which can be functionally determined from an attribute set is called as a closure of attributes. Right? That is what we call as a closure. Next thing, that is what we call as a key. What is key? A key is a set of attributes that can identify each tuple uniquely. Right? So key is basically used to identify each tuple uniquely. Key concept of keys basically come from there. If you are able to identify uniquely a set of key, then you can say that then it will be what? Key. So key is basically an attribute of an entity which can uniquely identify a tuple. Tuple is what exactly? What is tuple? Tuple is basically rows or the entries in a database. Now there is various type of keys. Keys are also various type, right? So let me take the color is this color, right? Type of keys. Right. So keys these are also of various type, right? uh, right. Super key. A super key is a set of attributes that can identify each tuple uniquely in the given relation. A super key may consist of number of attributes, right? Super key क्या होती है? Super key is a set of attributes. It is basically a set of attribute that can identify each tuple uniquely, right? So it basically super key is a set of attributes that can identify each tuple uniquely in the given relation. Suppose you are giving any relation, and in that relation you are basically identifying each tuple uniquely in that relation only. That is what we call as super key. Super key may consist of any number of attributes. Now the next thing that is came to my mind is candidate key, a set of minimal attributes that can identify each tuple uniquely in the given relation. Called candidate key. Primary key. A primary key is a candidate key that the database designer select while designing the database. Primary key are unique, not null. Primary key must be unique, but it cannot be null, right? Alternative key. So candidate key that are left in unimplemented and implemented primary is called as alternative keys, right? Foreign keys. An attribute X is called as foreign key to some other attributes Y when its values are dependent on the values of attribute of Y. देखो प्राइमरी की समझ में आया. प्राइमरी की जो डेटाबेस के द्वारा उसके द्वारा बनाई जाती है जब वो डेटाबेस क्रिएट करता है, ये कभी भी नल नहीं हो सकती. तो प्राइमरी की नेवर नेवर एवर बी नल, राइट. नेक्स्ट थिंग दैट इज अल्टरनेटिव की. So candidate key, foreign key. An attribute X is called as a foreign key to the some attribute Y when its value of dependent on the value. So when its values are dependent on the value, the relations in which attributes of Y is present is called the reference relation. The relation in which the attribute X is present is called as the reference relation, right? So foreign key क्या होती है? Suppose we are having one relation and another we are having one relation, right? So we are having attribute. Suppose we are having attribute X and we are having attribute Y, right? So an attribute X is said to be the foreign key for the Y when its values are dependent on the attribute of Y. So when its values are dependent on the value of Y, then this will be said to be the foreign key, right? Foreign key. So it will be said as the foreign key, right? Right. Next is composite key. A primary key composed of multiple attributes. Suppose we are having primary key, and that primary key basically consists of multiple attributes. That primary key basically consists of multiple attributes. That is what we call as the next is the unique key. What is unique key? It is unique for all records and one assigned value. Right? This is all what we have learned about. The main is super key, primary key, and the foreign key. These are basically most important, right? And all the remaining basically looks to be same, right? Now next we will going to discuss about the functional dependence. Functional dependence. Trivial and non-trivial functional decomposition and relation. First NF to NF transaction, active state, asset properties. We will discuss all this. So now come to the functional dependency. Any relation functionally if host two tuple of same value, right? ठीक है. Functional dependency, travel functional dependency. If functional dependency X to Y is said to be trivial, right? This is not that important. This is not that important, right? Decomposition. The process of breaking down or dividing a single relation into the many sub relations is what decomposition. Decomposition, there are some other properties that you can see, that the looseness decomposition and dependency preservation, right? Looseness decomposition ensures no information. So these are basically right. Types of decomposition. अब types of decomposition भी क्या होते हैं? Types of decomposition, right? It will never become clear. Right? So type of decomposition. Loosely joined and lossy joined and looseless joined. These are basically the type of decomposition. Decomposition basically क्या होते हैं, जब हम किसी भी एक मतलब एक रिलेशन को या फिर एक टपल को सब डिवाइड करके मल्टीपल टपल में कन्वर्ट करके उस प्रोसेस को बेसिकली हम डिकम्पोजिशन कहते हैं. What is decomposition? Decomposition is a process of breaking down of the records that are stored in a tuples into the subtuples. Subtuples में रिकॉर्ड प्रोसेस को अपन करते हैं. Next comes the process of normalization. Wow, normalization is very important topic. Very, very. In Dbms, the database management system normalization is a process of making database consistent by reducing the redundancy, ensuring the integrity of data through the looseless decomposition. Right. Normal forms. There are various normal forms. First NF, 1NF, and 2NF. Right. 1NF, 2NF. There are various type of normal. There are various type of normal form. Right. 1NF and 2NF. Right. Right. 1NF basically a given relation is said to be whenever each cell of table contains atomic value. So these all we will discuss in basically type of example that will be really useful, right? Transaction a single unit, right? Transaction is a single logical unit of work formed by a set of work. So transaction will read operation and write operation and instruction will read from the database and store in the buffer memory. Write operation will store, will write and update the value of a and transaction state. So these are basically all the transaction state. Active state, we are having various state: active state, partial state, what is said to be commit state, what is said to be failed state also, aborted state, terminated states. Now acid properties, very important thing. Acid properties are very important in the database management system, right? So what are acid properties? To ensure the consistency of the database, certain properties are followed by all the transaction through the occurring in the system. What is transaction? We had discussed earlier. What is transaction? Let me change the color to this. Transaction is basically a single logical unit work to form a set of groups, right? So basically, what is atomicity? Atomicity, to ensure the consistency of the database, we follow some of the properties. That is what we call as the acid property. Number one is atomicity. The property ensures that either transaction occurs completely or does not occur at all. Right. Let me give the example of this. Wait. Uh, wait. Uh, Guys, divide the bulk and start. Right. Right. So let me open this. We will also discuss about the so this is basically the some of the things that I basically need to discuss. Atomicity, introduction, master sequence, type, atomicity. Right. Wait, guys. I'm basically mm, basically saying something. Okay. wait guys, we will also revise the concepts of Python also. Wait guys. It's almost 34 minutes. From last 34 minutes I'm basically speaking and speaking all the time. So regular expressions are also being discussed. Assert the method of overloading inheritance. Right. So we were basically discussing about the atom, the property ensure that each transaction occur completely or it does not occur. एसिड प्रॉपर्टी में सबसे पहली जो प्रॉपर्टी आती है वो होती है एटमिसिटी। एटमिसिटी राइट, सबसे पहली प्रॉपर्टी ये आती है कि एटमिसिटी। एटमिसिटी प्रॉपर्टी ये कहती है कि अगर कोई भी ट्रांजेक्शन अकर हो रही है तो वो यहाँ पर कंप्लीटली अकर होगी या फिर नहीं होगी। ट्रांजेक्शन इज हो रही है ना, तो इन अदर वर्ड इट एंश्योर दैट नो ट्रांसफर, मतलब कोई भी ट्रांजेक्शन पार्शियली अकर ना हो, उसको ये ध्यान रखता है। समझ रहे? Right. Number one is consistency. The property ensures that integrity constraints are maintained. Right. Integrity constraints are maintained. In other words, it ensures the database remains consistent before and after transaction. Right. Right. So suppose कोई transaction हो रही है and the database should remain constant or consistent before and after the transaction. Right. That is what we call as the consistency property. Number one is atomicity property. Atomicity property basically deals with the transaction part. Suppose it says that if a transaction is happening, then it will happen completely or it will not happen. Right. If transaction occurs, so it can occur completely, otherwise or it will not occur. Right. That is what we call as the transaction. That is what is known as transaction. Right. Transaction number. So means it basically says that there should not be any partial transaction. That is one. Number second is what? Consistency. Consistency, the property ensure that integrity constraints should be maintained. Right. Number third, in other words, it ensures that database remains consistent before and after transaction. Right. Now the third one is isolation. Isolation is very important thing to need to discuss. Right. So you need to discuss this also. What isolation? So that property ensures that multiple transactions can occur simultaneously but without causing any inconsistency. Isolation say that multiple transactions can be done simultaneously but without doing any without causing any consistency. Multiple transactions can occur simultaneously without causing any inconsistency. Right. Now the next is the resultant state of the system after executing all the transaction in the same state that would be achieved if the transaction were executed serially one after one. This is what isolation. Isolation ये कहता है, क्या कहता है बताओ, कि अगर it basically say that if multiple transactions can occur simultaneously, but it cannot contain any inconsistency in the system. This is what. Number four is durability. This property ensures that all changes made by a transaction after a successful execution are returned successfully to the desk. Right. So it ensures that what? Key. It ensures that what? This property ensures that all changes made by transaction. Right. All changes made by transaction, all changes are made by transaction after its successful execution are returned successful on the disk. Means, repeat, the property ensures that all changes made by transaction after its successful execution are returned successfully to the disk. Right. Suppose कोई transaction हो रहा है तो उसकी जो ट्रांजेक्शन होने के बाद जो चेंजेस हुए हैं वो डिस्क पे राइट होना चाहिए। समझ रहे हो? वो ड्यूरेबिलिटी कहती है। It ensures that these changes exist permanently and never lost even if they fails to. Right. सो मतलब डेटाबेस की कंसिस्टेंटी को मेंटेन करने के लिए कुछ प्रॉपर्टी जो हम फॉलो करते हैं उनको हम एसिड प्रॉपर्टी कहते हैं। एसिड प्रॉपर्टी में नंबर 1 पे आती है एटॉमिसिटी। एटॉमिसिटी ये चीज को इंश्योर करती है, क्या चीज को इंश्योर, कि अगर कोई ट्रांजेक्शन हो रही है तो वो कंप्लीटली होगी, वरना फिर कंप्लीटली नहीं होगी, पार्शियल ट्रांजेक्शन नहीं होगी। नंबर सेकंड कंसिस्टेंसी। कंसिस्टेंसी ये कहती है कि मतलब कंसिस्टेंसी की इंटीग्रिटी को मेंटेन करती है कि अगर कोई ट्रांजेक्शन हो रही तो ट्रांजेक्शन होने के पहले और ट्रांजेक्शन होने के बाद सिस्टम पे की कंसिस्टेंसी पे कोई फर्क नहीं पकड़ना चाहिए। दैट इज व्हाट वी कॉल एज द कंसिस्टेंसी। दैट इज गोइंग टू बी आवर पार्ट 2 नाउ। दैट इज गोइंग टू बी आवर पार्ट that is basically going to be our part 2, right? Number third that we are basically going to see is isolation. Isolation basically says that suppose multiple processes are running at the same time, right? अगर मल्टीपल प्रोसेस सेम टाइम पर रन हो रही हैं इस सिस्टम में, तो साइमल्टेनियसली एक ही टाइम पे अगर दो प्रोसेस सेम हो रही है तो वो सिस्टम की कंसिस्टेंसी को अफेक्ट ना करे। दैट इज व्हाट वी कॉल इज द आइसोलेशन। द प्रॉपर्टी ensures that multiple transaction can occur simultaneously. Multiple transaction can occur simultaneously without causing any inconsistency. Number fourth is result state of the system after execute. This is all. ड्यूरेबिलिटी ये कहता है कि कोई ट्रांजेक्शन होता है फ्रॉम किसी भी सिस्टम से, तो ट्रांजेक्शन के द्वारा जो चेंज किया जाता है उस सिस्टम में किसी पर, तो उसका जो रिकॉर्ड है ना वो डिस्क पे राइट होना चाहिए। इट एंश्योर दैट द चेंज दीज चेंजेस एग्जिस्ट परमानेंटली और नेवर लॉस्ट इफ दीज चेंजेस occurs any failure of that. The order in which operations of multiple transactions upon execution is known as schedule. Schedule means serial scheduling, non-serial schedule, right? Serial level, non-serial level. Conflict schedule, there are various types of schedule that are available. Serial schedule, non-serial schedules, serializability, right? Type of serializability, serializable, serially, type of recoverable schedules. These are some of the schedules. Relational algebra, right? So these are basically some of the schedules that basically we will discuss in another video, right? Right. Now we will come to the relational algebra. Relational algebra is a procedural PQL, that is positional query language, which take the relation as an input and generates relation as an output. Basic operator is semantic. That is what we call selection operator. Select rows based on the given condition. Suppose you are given some condition, on the basis of given condition you will select some of the rows. This is basically known as selection. This is what is projection. Project some column. This is display some columns, right? Selection sigma represent for selects sigma, project cross product. The cross product of a relation m into n, where m into n are the number of rows and r1 and r2. So we are giving basically, so suppose right, so uh, suppose we are having some relation, and in that relation x represented the cross product. Suppose we are having set a, b and c, right? And another set we are having c, d and e. Then cross product of that will be ac, bd, c. This will be known as the AC, AD, AE, BC, VD, VE. Matlab the number of outcomes will be 3 to be squared. 3 squared, 9 will be. Right, AC, AD, AE, BC, BD, BE, CA, CD, CE. And these are same, right? AC, AD, AE, BC, BD, B. ठीक है, so AB, AC, right, BC, bus. This is basically the cross product. Union, these are those terms which are either in order 1 or 2, and one return m plus 1 minus return r1 minus r2 is those tuples which are not in either one. ठीक है, This is what we can rename. Renaming a relation into a relation. Intersection returns equijoin. There are various types of equijoin, natural join, and left outer join, right outer join, file structures. B tree at any empty level, right? Order of tree, B plus tree, SQL आ गई. SQL में भी DDL होती है, डेटा डेफिनेशन लैंग्वेज, जो अपन को बेसिकली डेफिनेशन डेटा डेफिनेशन डिटेल्स अबाउट डेटाबेस स्कीमा, जो बेसिकली किसी भी डेटाबेस स्कीमा के बारे में डिटेल बताता है, उसको हम कहते हैं DDL. डिटेल बेसिकली स्टैंड्स फॉर डेटा डेफिनेशन लैंग्वेज. क्रिएट, अल्टर, ड्रॉप, ट्रंकेट एंड रीनेम. क्रिएट टू क्रिएट डेटाबेस, alter structure, draw. Next, what we will use? DMS, data manipulation. Like select हो गया, insert हो गया, update हो गया, delete हो गया. Inside, these type of basically query, or the SQL query is basically comes. So sir, these type of basically SQL query comes in the category of DML. DML basically stands for data manipulation language, right? So SQL queries that can basically perform the manipulation on the relation data in the relation database, that is what we call as the DML. DML के अंदर कौन कौन सी क्वेरी आती है? सिलेक्ट आती है, आपकी इंसर्ट आती है, अपडेट आती है, डिलीट आती है, एंड मर्ज आती है. सिलेक्ट करने के, इंसर्ट डेटा इंसर्ट करने, अपडेट किसी भी डेटा को मॉडिफाई करने से, डिलीट करने के लिए मर्ज. हाँ, समझना से DCL, डेटा कंट्रोल लैंग्वेज, which include commands such as grant and mostly basically these type of command basically give access, right? So these type of basically command provide access, grant, allow user to access privilege to the database and without ठीक है ना. Now TCL, what is TCL? TCL, transaction control language, which deals with the transaction within the language, like commit, rollback and save point. Commit, rollback transaction case of any error, save point to save, make point with the code. SQL, SQL basically stands for structured query language, right? Right. So SQL basically क्या कहलाती है? SQL is a structured query language for storing, manipulating and retrieving database. This is what we call as a structured query language. मतलब SQL is a standard query language for storing, manipulating and retrieving. स्टोर करने के लिए, मैनिपुलेट कर रहे हैं, एंड उसके अंदर सबसे जो पहली नंबर की क्वेरी जो आती है वो होती है सेलेक्ट स्टेटमेंट. एसक्यूएल हम है ना कल के वीडियो में देखेंगे. एसक्यूएल के पूरी कंसेप्ट हम देखेंगे, आप चिंता मत कीजिए, जुड़े रहिए. और ये बेसिकली वीडियो था. आई होप दैट यू विल लाइक दिस वीडियो. वी विल ट्राई टू डू another session every day, right? So I hope that you have enjoyed the video.